Hello, my name is Erin McPherson, and this is my Foundations of Emergency Management oral presentation video. In this video, I'm going to be discussing constitutional rights in times of major disasters. Here is an overview of my presentation. I will answer why this topic is important, what constitutional rights are, what a disaster is, what amendments are the most vital during disasters, and instances of the government or government agencies violating these amendments, and lastly, we'll discuss the response to these violations. We are going to discuss why this subject is important. This is an important subject because the federal government is expected to react in times of a major disaster. The federal government must not only react, but must also do so swiftly. That being said, they are also expected to respect the rights of the citizens of the United States whilst simultaneously ensuring that citizens are getting the aid and assistance they need. These rights, in which the federal government is responsible for protecting, are outlined in the Constitution. Before we delve any deeper into how constitutional rights play into disasters, it is important to know what constitutional rights are, as well as what qualifies as a disaster. Obviously, constitutional rights are those that can be linked directly back to the Constitution. The first 10 amendments are of the most important. These rights are also known as the Bill of Rights. These rights apply to every U.S. citizen and every U.S. corporation. Some examples of constitutional rights can be the freedom of speech, the right to bear arms, and the right to a fair and speedy trial. Now that we know what constitutional rights are, we should talk about disasters. According to the lecture slide, a disaster is classified as a dangerous event that causes significant human and economic loss and demands a crisis response beyond the scope of any single agency or jurisdiction. Some examples of disasters could be Hurricane Katrina, the earthquake of Northridge, and floods in North Carolina after Hurricane Floyd. Alright, now that we know what constitutional rights are and what event is considered a disaster, we must try to understand how these two concepts interact with one another. We're going to start off with the First Amendment. The First Amendment is an important constitutional right in regard to disaster situations. The First Amendment says that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for redress of grievances. During a disaster, this allows for news media to cover the situation and publish the details regarding the storm, the damage, and the status of the government response. An example of a violation of the First Amendment can be most clearly seen during Hurricane Katrina. FEMA went to great lengths to ensure that the press could not take pictures of the damage and victims of this natural disaster. This directly violates the idea of freedom of the press. This poses the question: to protect the privacy of the dead and injured, should constitutional rights be suspended during disasters? And now we're going to talk about the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment is the right to bear arms. The Second Amendment was violated when the shelters constructed following Hurricane Katrina refused to accept victims who were in possession of firearms. It is an American citizen's right to bear arms, even during a disaster, so it's a direct violation of the Second Amendment to turn away law-abiding citizens in their time of need. The last amendment we're going to go in depth about is the 10th Amendment. The 10th Amendment says that the power is not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, or reserved to the states respectively, or to the people. This is an important amendment in conjunction with disaster policy because it ensures that following a natural or man-made disaster, that the state government has sovereignty regardless of involvement of other levels of government. And here are some other notable amendments that are important during disasters. The Fourth Amendment, which prohibits unreasonable searches and seizures and requires any search warrant to be judicially sanctioned and supported by probable cause. The Sixth Amendment, the right to a speedy and fair trial, and the 14th Amendment, which granted equal protection under the law. There have been various responses to these violations, one being from the American Bar Association. They delineated rule of law in times of major disasters, such as Hurricane Katrina. They described 12 principles to ensure the ruling of law during these times to confirm the Constitution is being followed. Also, the Interagency Standing Committee, their job is to safeguard those affected by natural disasters and to ensure that these violations do not occur again. Overall, what I wanted you to get from this presentation was that constitutional rights are immensely important during the times of natural disasters and other disasters and throughout disaster policy. It is these rights that protect citizens from further damage or harm.